Okay, you're live and recording.
Thank you, Valerie. Looks like we've got our participants coming in already. Welcome. I'm Dr. Tim Hess. I'm one of your panelists today, along with Dr. Gary Hayamoto and our executive director from the Washington Academy of General Dentistry, Valerie Bartoli. So thank you for all of you that joined us this morning, that are going to join us this afternoon for Penny Reed's presentation. Looking forward to it. We're just going to give a little bit of time so everybody can get familiar with their Zoom app and merge into the presentation here. Lots of questions with our previous webinar. If you want to register for other courses, washingtonagd.org. Or as you can see the flyers going by, we have QR codes for all the upcoming speakers. We've got another 21 webinars that are going to occur over the next couple of weeks, and we'll probably add some more to that depending on how time allows. So today, your CE credits are going to be issued from the University of Washington School of Dentistry. Those CE credits will be sent out in the next couple of days at the email address you registered with. So don't be emailing the WAGD looking for your CE credits. Those will go out automatically, and they will go out based on how much time you stay on this Zoom webinar. So it could be an hour of CE or hour and a half. With that, I'd just like to welcome everybody to the Washington Academy of General Dentistry Stay Home, Stay Healthy CE series. Just a reminder that every single one of our presenters is volunteering their time. There's no honorariums being paid. We appreciate that. We'd like to thank our co-sponsors, Seattle King County Dental Society, Pierce County Dental Society, Snohomish County Dental Society. We'd like to thank the Canadian Academy of Restorative Dentistry and Prosthodontics, Comet USA, Patterson Dental, and we'd like to thank our other organizations that are helping us out next week by putting together days. On Monday, we have the International Academy of Nathology is doing a day of speakers, and that's going to be followed by the Arkansas Academy of General Dentistry. And then on Thursday, we have the Canadian Academy of Restorative Dentistry and Prosthodontics. Those QR codes are going by. If you miss a webinar or for some reason your link isn't working, you can always go after the fact to YouTube and go to Washington Academy of General Dentistry, and those webinars should be up in the next 3 or 4 hours or so. If you see a slide go by and there's not a QR code on it, go to washingtonagd.org to register. And you should be able to find that CE. We're kind of just a volunteer group here, and we're trying to put these things together as quick as possible. So if something's not up on the website, just give it a day or so, and it should pop up there for you. Just a reminder that all these CE courses are available to any dentist, hygienist, assistant, front desk for CE credit. No, you do not need to be an AGD member. No, there's not going to be a CE code you have to write down for the CE event today. That's all done automatically through the University of Washington School of Dentistry CE department. So we thank them for their help. With the CE credit that's coming to you, that should be in PDF format. Just a reminder to save a copy of that just in case down the road something doesn't square up with your AGD transcript. AGD members, as always, we will be uploading your CE credits directly to the Academy of General Dentistry, and that should show up on your transcript within 2 to 4 weeks. So the AGD is really backed up. There are just so many CE events being done. So cut them a little bit of slack, and that'll be there eventually. Just a reminder, the Washington Academy of General Dentistry Master Track program still has a few slots available for the 2020-2021 series of speakers. So you can find registration details on washingtonagd.org. We did rollback pricing on that. So for those that series, we reduced it from $5,500 down to $4,000. So fantastic opportunity for continuing education. Again, for those of you that are just joining us, you'll see flyers going by with upcoming speakers. Feel free to use the QR codes or go to washingtonagd.org. After Penny Reed's presentation today, we've got Roy Shelburne that's coming up this afternoon, and he's going to be speaking at 2:30 Pacific time on due dentistry, not prison time, clinical records to prevent criminal records. So that should be a fun one. We've got 3 CE offerings tomorrow, including Dr. Michael Melkers, Bethany Vellucci, and Dr. Yassine continues his implant study club. Let's see. Okay, great. We're just about to the hour, noon, where we'll be starting. We'll just give a few minutes here so those that are new to Zoom can get logged in, get familiar with the interface. This interface, you have all the control over your sound, what you're seeing. If you have questions today, you can put them in the Q&A section, the tab there. Just click on that, and we'll try and hit those questions maybe throughout the presentation or at the very end there. If there's a question you like, use a thumbs up to upvote it. The chat function, please do not ask questions there. That's just for information and little comments like good job, etc. But we won't be looking at that for Q&A. So again, a reminder, your CE credit will come automatically to you within the next 2 or 3 days. Be looking for an email from the University of Washington School of Dentistry. Back to the Zoom application. You have the ability to control full screen. You can kind of do a split screen. You can slide the speakers to the side so you're not seeing them. You have the ability to go from gallery view to speaker view. Just play around with that. And as I say, you have the controls. We're not controlling what you're seeing there on your side, other than the PowerPoint presentations that are coming across. That's about it. So you are all muted because this is a webinar. We're not going to use the hands up feature today. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A section, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. There will be instructions over in the chat window every once in a while. Dr. Hayamoto will be putting in information like links to the washingtonagd.org or our YouTube location. So with that, it's noon right now, and oh boy, we still have many streaming in at a good rate. So we're just going to take a little bit of time here, Penny, and just go through and welcome to everybody that's joining us on the WAGD Stay Home, Stay Healthy CE series. Again, thank you to our sponsors, Snohomish County Dental Society, Pierce County Dental Society, and Seattle King County Dental Society. We'd like to thank the University of Washington School of Dentistry CE department that's handling all the CE credits, and thank you to Comet USA and Patterson Dental. Also, like to thank some of our co-sponsors from different dental organizations, the Canadian Academy of Restorative Dentistry and Prosthodontics, the International Academy of Nathology, and the Arkansas Academy of General Dentistry. Thank you, all those groups that have put together some great speakers for us. Those speakers, you can register using the QR codes. If the QR code doesn't work for you for some reason, use washingtonagd.org. If you missed a webinar or you want to review a webinar, you can see those at YouTube, and it's Washington Academy of General Dentistry. We apologize, but we do not have the ability to issue CE credits for webinars that you watch on YouTube. We just don't have that capability with our software. Again, we apologize to some of you that are joining us that weren't able to get on to Terry Harris's Zoom webinar this morning. It just overwhelmed our service package with Zoom, but that webinar will be available probably by the end of the day on YouTube. So with that, and I can see that we're well over 600 people on the webinar today, so thank you very much for joining us. Penny, I'm just going to take a second here and introduce you. Again, thank you very much. Penny Reed, BBA, CBC, is a coach, speaker, and author of the book, Growing Your Dental Business. She runs the Dental Coaching Institute and works with dentists who want to raise the bar on their performance and create an office culture where the entire team looks forward to coming to work every day. In addition, she coaches dentists and team leaders on implementing systems and standards that drive consistent and predictable revenues. Penny's expertise has been highlighted in widely published articles, both nationally and internationally. She has conducted presentations at dental meetings across the country for over 2 decades. And in addition, she hosts the Growing Your Dental Business podcast. Penny graduated from Harding University in 1990 with a BBA in management. She has received the Leaders in Dental Consulting designation from Dentistry Today from 2000 to present. Penny is a certified behavioral consultant through the Institute of Motivational Living. She is a member of the Academy of Dental Management Consultants, the Speaking and Consulting Network, the American Association of Dental Office Managers, and the National Speakers Association. On a personal note, Penny is a major Disney fan, and she always is plotting her next vacation or dental retreat near one of the theme parks. Welcome, Penny. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Sorry about that. And, I just have to just take 1 second and say, you are a nice person. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. That network of female speakers out there, Judy Kay and Lois and Deborah Engelhardt Nash, and boy, it's so good to see how supportive you guys are. And, we appreciate, this networking you've done with us. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. And especially during this time, what really counts are the relationships that we have with each other. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I live in Tennessee. So those of you tuning in that are in Washington State, I'm sure you will notice that I don't quite sound like the rest of you. Interesting story. I came this close to moving to Spokane. That would be the after the show. Love Washington State. And just delighted and honored to be here and to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is case acceptance. And thank you, Dr. Hess, for having me and for the Washington Academy of General Dentistry. And so let's get going here to give you guys just a little bit of background in addition to what was shared. Often when being introduced and the bio is being read, I keep thinking, wow, I put almost everything in there except my 3rd grade report card, which probably wasn't very good. I think I got in trouble for talking. I was a dental office manager for a couple of years, which was what led me to becoming a coach. So I'm not a dentist, but I have been in many of your shoes, and it's an honor to go along on this journey with you today. And you may ask, okay, what does this mean? Driving case acceptance, making treatment presentations and discussions more like Disney and less like the IRS. So as a child growing up, I can remember on Sunday nights looking forward to watching, and this was before we had the ability, I'm really dating myself here, before we had the ability to record things, kind of hoping that we might skip out on church occasionally, or that we would get home in time where I could catch part of the wonderful World of Disney show. And I am a huge fan of Disney. Right now, I'm not planning a trip, right, because we're sheltering in place, but I'm dreaming of it. So what Disney did, and so in my mind, I think, well, if Disney did dentistry, it would be much like that show was, where the black and white episodes where Walt Disney had his pointer and he would be pointing at something, right, on the screen, or he might have a baby lion sitting on his desk or a dog. He really brought things to life. And so when we think about discussing treatment with patients, getting them engaged in their treatment, we want it to feel more like that and less like the feeling that we get when we're reviewing, let's say, an IRS 1040 tax form, which, interesting fact, my mom used to work for the IRS. So nothing personal necessarily against the Internal Revenue Service, but you guys know, especially those that don't like details and paperwork and confusing paperwork, what emotionally happens when you look at something like that. So especially in this time where chair time may be a little more scarce than it has been in the past, working smarter, not harder, the true definition of that is increased case acceptance. All of the energy and effort that we put into the practice, everything from, and I want to really encourage you guys, if you want to take screenshots of the slides, I would be honored. To me, this image really shows what it is that happens in the practice as far as all of the work that we do to generate the production, right? Bring in the collections through taking care of patients. So oftentimes when we think about practice growth, we go straight to, okay, I want to grow my practice. What marketing advice do you have? And marketing is incredibly important, right? And advertising is a component of marketing. Marketing is really communication, right? Everything related to communication. So your case presentations are actually a form of your marketing as well. But for the sake of this example in this chart, when you look at the top of it, all of the time that we put into the planning, spending time with patients, the energy, the money, right, that we're dumping into this funnel. And it really begins to take shape from the moment that the telephone is answered. And so today's program is not on phone skills, but one of the best tips that I can give you and would definitely encourage you and your team, whether you have a system that will record your phone calls, a phone system that will, or you have some training and have them record themselves to hear how they sound. We want to be sure that we sound like we love our job. That's some of the best marketing that we can have. And actually, case acceptance begins really with your branding. And an extension of that branding is how the phone is answered. So the telephone's answered, appointments are scheduled, patients evaluated for whether it's an emergency evaluation or a comprehensive evaluation, or if it's an existing patient, right? It might be an incoming phone call or an online appointment scheduled. Then after we evaluate, we present the treatment, right? The treatment options for the patients. We go over that treatment. Now the patient says, oh yes, I want to do that. We have the financial discussion. From that, we get the treatment scheduled, or maybe it's same day treatment, right? So treatment completed and paid for. All of these steps that we have to go through, or if you think about it, hoops to jump through to get down to that bottom line of bringing collections into the practice so that we've got cash flow. Well, when we think about working smarter, not harder, it's not expanding the top of the funnel so much as it is working to expand the bottom of that funnel. And through some of the things that I'll share with you, and this time last year, we were about to have a retreat at Disney World, and where we got to do a Business Behind the Magic tour. And now I love Disney. I don't work for Disney, but I want to correlate some of the things that we can do to not only improve our case presentations, but also track things like they would do at Disney. So what I'm showing you here, this graphic, and this is from a dental dashboard with software, but I really want to talk about the concept of what gets measured gets managed. And I like to make a lot of jokes about being on a diet, probably because I think I've been on one since I was in the third grade. If we go by how we feel, right, especially during shelter in place, most of you, if you're on social media, have seen the whole be sure to try your jeans on once a week, right? Because, right, if we're not really measuring, I don't really feel like my weight has changed. Well, we can't always trust that. Or as the Mary Chapin Carpenter song, I Feel Lucky, right? The stars may lie, but the numbers never do. So finding some metrics that we can track consistently to see, are we achieving that goal of working smarter, not harder? So I'm going to come back at the very end to this figure at the top and tell you guys how to calculate that. But I want to show you some things as an example in this particular practice of metrics that you could track. So in this practice for a given month, they presented $429,622 in new treatment, right? These are new treatment plans, of which 184,302 was either accepted and or scheduled, right? So it was not declined, but it was one or the other. That would give them an acceptance rate of 43%. All right, so that is one way to track, right, is dollars. The other is in looking at, of the patients that we've scheduled with, what percentage of those actually scheduled. The other is the diagnostic percentage. So often we look at, right, and we diagnose, right, what's present, but sometimes being clearer about what this is. If it's, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, if it truly is a watch, then that's all it needs to be, right? But if it's a specific diagnosis, being sure that the team understands what that is so that the accurate data is getting put into the treatment plan. If you were to only take away, and I'm going to share with you a couple of other metrics, and then we're going to get away from the math, right? In case some of you thought, wow, I didn't know we were doing math today. We're just going to do a little bit of math. This figure right here, it's incredibly accurate. Whereas often what I hear, whether, and my husband's in sales, it's the same thing in his business, is that there's a lot of different ways to measure the case acceptance, right? Or the sales acceptance, your close ratio. This number doesn't deviate. And so what this is, and actually this dashboard, this one is from Dental Intel. You can calculate this particular figure here. All you need to know are two figures each and every month. You need to know what your operative production is, right? Or if you're in a specialty practice and you don't have a hygiene department, right, you could take your production and divide it by the number of evaluations that you did that month, right? Your D0, 140, 150, 120, 160, 180. You follow along, right? Your evaluation codes. And that would give you an average dollar per exam. So in this particular instance, the operative production divided by the number of evaluations gave them $595, right? In another month, if they produced more and did the same number of evaluations, then that number would be higher. If they produced the same and saw more evaluations, the number would be lower. But that's a great metric to keep an eye on. As far as the impact of what case presentation and case acceptance can do for a practice, going back to the bottom with this number circled, if only 35% of the presented treatment dollars were accepted and scheduled, that would have been $150,000 as opposed to the $184,302, which is about almost $34,000 a month, $400,000 annually, right? So now more than ever before, especially because we're going to be very cognizant of our chair time, probably more so than we ever have, we want to be sure that we're doing our best to engage the patient in communication. So knowledge is power. In this example also, we're looking at, we presented new treatment plans to 370 patients, 300 left with their next appointment. So that should also be a goal, is that patients are leaving with their next appointment, unless they're the kind of patient that can't keep an appointment. And then we want to be sure that we don't book them too far out as far as getting them back in. So let's go back to a little bit more of a Disney type concept or a storytelling engagement type concept. I want you to take a moment to think about what you believe in regards to a patient's mindset of what's most important to them in their dental health. And in a live audience presentation, we are usually using a polling system. Okay, so you can just use your imagination. I would even say close your eyes, just don't fall asleep on me, right? If you haven't eaten if you've already eaten lunch, you might be a little sleepy. What do you believe is most important? Would you say it is appearance? Is it wanting to be out of pain? For some patients, it might be they don't want any decay or disease in their mouth. Some might say that it is only what my insurance will pay, right? So I'll just kind of get to the bottom line. Other than when I've spoken to dental students, and I'll just a little funny aside on that, just very interesting results when lecturing to those that are still in dental school. Most of the time, about 50% of the audience will say, well, most of our patients, what's most important to them is only doing what their insurance will pay. So I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes, but that really, whatever our mindset is as a practitioner in the culture of our practice, really drives and dictates how we present treatment, what our expectation is, and how we communicate to patients. So I'm going to give you an example here in this belief cycle. This would probably also be a great slide to take a screenshot of, and we'll be on it for a couple of moments. If we are in a practice that believes that patients only want to do what their insurance will cover a great portion of, then that drives our focus in that direction, right? Whether we want it to or not, right? We may begin to get excited about delivering a new treatment service in our office, and instead of it being a question that needs to be answered on behalf of the patient, we've elevated it to a huge amount of concern. We're super focused on, wow, well, if insurance isn't going to cover it, I bet there probably wouldn't be a lot of people that would do it, right? So if those seeds are planted in the back of our mind, then the action that we would take is we might not present it as often as we would otherwise. Or when we think about communication is only 7% words. So you've got 55% body language, 38% tone of voice. Even how we approach a patient, if we really don't think it's something that we'll do, it's almost like a dog that thinks they may be in trouble, which, by the way, yeah, I'm getting a puppy. We can talk about that later too. But you know the posture that I'm talking about, right? Then the results that we would get would not be as great as they would have if we had had a different mindset. So in other words, if we believe that what's most important to patients is only doing what insurance will cover a large portion of, that drives our focus. It influences the actions that we take, what we communicate, and how directly influences our results, which then reinforces, well, yeah, I told you people probably wouldn't want to do that, right? There really wasn't that much of a point. Oh yeah, we tried that. We didn't have that much success with it. In contrast, right? If we believe that, wow, look at the great results that we can get with patients with this type of treatment. Who wouldn't want this, right? Let's find out what the patient's goals are. And I've got some specific strategies on that. But if we shift that focus to say, oh, well, we believe that if a patient really wants something, that they want us to help them find a way to do it. So it shifts the focus. Now, when we have the conversation, we're automatically, even if we may not have the polished verbal skills yet, our body language shows we're more enthusiastic. Our tone of voice reflects that as well. And that drives the results. Once we get a greater case acceptance on those things, or have more patients say yes, more patients scheduled for that. And as an example, let's say it's dental implants. It reinforces the beliefs. So I like to call this little story that I'm going to share with you a tale of two practices. True story. won't share the names. There once were two different practices located not very far from one another, right? Not in the exact same city, but in small communities. They were about 90 minutes apart, similar demographics as far as employment for their patients. Really no significant difference between these two offices. Both had nice facilities, a lot of street visibility, and both had multiple doctors in the practice that had implant training as well as oral conscious sedation. So one practice had the belief system and mindset that, oh, yeah, our patients, they really don't want to spend the money on implants, and they certainly are not wanting to do the oral conscious sedation. Like that, we rarely ever do it, right? I could see that from their procedure, report of production by procedure. Yet another office that I began to work with that approached me, they said, we're having to bring in a third doctor. We are doing so many implants. And by the way, our oral conscious sedation program has taken off. We're getting so many new patients in that had been postponing their treatment. And again, these offices were really about an hour and a half drive apart. So they were not pulling patients from one practice to another. But they said, people, they're clamoring, we're expanding, we're adding chairs. It really came back to the difference in mindset was the start, right? The clinical training was the same. But because of that difference in mindset, maybe they got rejected in the other office a time or two. So the opportunity that we had there before we began to talk about the verbal skills was reframing in our mind what we believe is possible. So I want you to take a deep breath in. All right, let that breath out. And yeah, I would still do it even if you're watching the YouTube video later, okay? Because I want to shift gears with you, but I want you to keep this belief cycle mindset in the back of your mind. So, general principle of sales, and that is that people don't necessarily buy what they need or only what they need. They buy what they want. And case in point, we often see people driving vehicles. In the back of our mind, we may think, wow, that is such a nice car. Well, did they buy that high-end vehicle because they needed it? Well, I'll talk about that part in just a second here. They really bought it because they wanted it. What do we need when it comes to transportation? Well, a car needs to have wheels. At least it does in the year 2020, right? I don't think we have a lot of flying cars going around. In most areas, it needs air conditioning, right? It needs a steering wheel, right? Or a way to steer it. It needs a gas pedal. It needs a brake pedal or a mechanism to do that. Most everything else comes down to desire. It comes down to a want. So to illustrate this, I want you to think about, for those of you, for the ladies in the audience, I want you to think about, has there ever been a purse, right? Maybe a Michael Kors or a Kate Spade, or you fill in the blank with your favorite brand, a purse that you decided that you needed. You know what I'm talking about, right? You wanted it so badly, right? You couldn't think about anything else because you needed it, right? For the gentleman tuning in, maybe it was a new gadget. Maybe it was a new phone if you hunt, right? It might be, a new crossbow, or you follow me here, might be a vehicle. But when we really, really want something, we will call it a need. Yet most of us are not motivated when people tell us what we need. Well, here's what you need to do. Unless someone has asked, usually when we even use those words, it's sort of like maybe they don't completely, turn us off, but they turn the volume down a little bit, and we begin to lose that engagement. So case in point, if we were going to be a little bit more like Disney, I can remember years ago, on my team, we were taking our team to Disney. We're 6 of us that went, and we went over a long weekend. And so when we called up the resort to schedule and told them what we were asking for, and they asked, what will you be celebrating? Right. So we're like, oh, we're celebrating. We've had a great year. We want to reward our team. It really began to amp up more of the excitement about what we were planning than them simply taking the reservation. Right. So what will we be celebrating? In essence, they were asking what's most important. I'm jumping ahead here. So beyond the verbal skills, and we'll dive deeper into those, the biggest thing that I can share, and it has to be, and I will say I've seen an uptick over the last few years, at least with our clients. The biggest underutilized tool that we have is the camera, specifically the intraoral camera, or maybe their intraoral photos taken with an actual digital camera, right? But the more that we talk about what we're seeing in the patient's mouth, what's going on with them, and I'm even going to say beyond an x-ray. So what does the average layperson understand? So if we were to correlate this, let's say to example, to the newspaper world, a Wall Street Journal, right? That would be more like a college level publication, right? There aren't any pictures. There are some people that understand it, yet USA Today has had a greater readership, right? Because it's written on a 7th grade level. The pictures are in color, right? It's much more engaging. So we have to think the way that the patient thinks. And really, when we are talking to the patient about what's going on in their mouth, what their oral condition is, if there's a way to represent that with a photo, then that's what we need to do, right? Not that we don't show them the x-rays, but really, and you guys remember, I'm a business coach, right? I'm not a hygienist, not a dental assistant, not a dentist. So I still see things very much the way that a patient sees them. And that's something that I notice often when I'm in dental practices, is even when we think that our communication on a scale of 1 to 10 with really conveying the message to the patient, we may say, oh, we're an 8, we're a 9, or a 10. It's a whole lot of talking, right? And not near as much showing as we should when it relates to the patient's present condition, and also when it relates to what it is that they want. So I want to key in on some opportunities that you have to engage the patient more utilizing intraoral photos. So in this example, typically what happens with an office, when I bring this up, I'm like, tell me where you are. 0 is we don't have a camera or we don't know where it is. 10 is we have an intraoral camera in every room. We take photos whenever possible, not only at the new patient evaluation, and we're showing those photos, right? So not only that we have them, but we're utilizing them. Even the offices that'll say they're an 8, 9, or a 10, if I'm on site in their practice, or if we're maybe doing a screen share and looking in their system and somewhat auditing what's actually been done, they're great with the new patient photos. With recare, a whole lot less consistent, and then missing out on many, many opportunities to continue to engage the patient. So our patients are much like we are, right? How easy it is to be engaged and in tune with what's happening when we're in the chair. Yet when we leave, and especially if days, weeks, months go by before we proceed with that treatment, we don't have the same remembering. We're not as in the moment or in tune emotionally with what it was that we wanted. So I would propose that when the patient comes in and they are seated, if they're in for restorative treatment, that we are showing them, right, either on a tablet or a monitor in front of them, we pull up that area that we're working on today, right? And I'll give an example. In medicine, outside of dentistry, I can remember when my mom had to have a surgery on her right leg. Well, they actually marked on her leg, right? Okay, this is what we're doing, right? This is what we're working on. We looked at the x-ray. So what we're about to do today, So we're engaging the patient often, because dentistry is confusing for a lot of patients. Often you may have a patient that says, wait, I thought we were doing XYZ today, right? So this just gets us all on the same page at the beginning of the appointment. Next, what we did today. So upon completion of the treatment today, if by taking a photo, we can show them, or perhaps it's our 3D scanner, which is still a picture, right? Here's what we did today, right? Or here's what we just did. We did this prep. Here's this impression that we're taking. We're about to mill your restoration. So even though you may think, okay, well, we already closed them on the treatment, the better we do at engaging them in the process, the more likely they are to schedule the next step, right? They feel like they're part of this, and they are incredibly impressed with your technology. And then last but not least, when we talk about what's next, don't just tell them, show them. So if we've not made a financial agreement for their entire treatment, now it's up to our, either us as a treatment coordinator, if we might be in that same role as an assistant, or bringing an admin team member in, or bringing the patient to an administrative team member, now to schedule what's next and to talk about the financial portion of that. We want them to see. In other words, or maybe you could even think about Universal Studios. I believe at one time their tagline, it was ride the movies, right? We want them to ride the wave, stay on that wave of what's happening with their treatment. So if you notice those 3 points, if you go straight down, they all start with the word what, right? So you could think WWW, what are we about to do today? What we did today and what's next. Another opportunity that many practices miss out on, that I want to highly encourage you to be intentional with, is when the patient comes in for their recare visit, if they have not taken action on previously diagnosed treatment, let's be sure to either show them the previous photos or take new ones, or possibly both, and show them the contrast, right? Whether it's recession, or if there's, if there was a crack in a tooth, let's bring them into the experience of what's going on in their mouth, because we can tell them all day long, and you guys know, right? They see it. Not only do they remember it, but they own it. Here's the other part. We always want our patients to be comfortable, right? We want them to be physically comfortable, and we want them to feel like they're safe. Yet there's a point where when people are super comfortable, that they don't do anything. So showing them those photos, yes, we want them to feel comfortable and safe. We want to create a little bit of a disruption between their present condition and where they say they want to go. Okay, so showing them the intraoral photos, gathering the diagnostics, that is like saying, okay, we're going to drop a pin. If we think about GPS, here's where you are. All right, so let's next move into where we could possibly go with that. All right, so language tools. And as we're segueing into a little bit of a new topic, I want to encourage you guys, see that there's a couple of things in the Q&A. If we see that there are quite a few in there before we get to the end, I'll be happy to pause and take a look at some of those along the way. And if not, then we can certainly get to those at the end. So,
do you want to hit these 2 questions right now?
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to stop my share while we do that. And
well, you're good with Zoom. You go in and out real easy.
Well, it's like anything else. I've used it a lot, especially over the shelter in place, and I'm quite a geek. So I was a manager, an IT manager before the dental office. So, all right. So this one's an easy one. Please repeat the communication percentage. So I'm not sure where I did not invent this. I've been hearing it since I was in my early 20s. But when you are talking about a face-to-face communication, 55% is body language, right? Your physiology. And then I'm trying, it's either 37 or 38% is actually the tone of voice. right? So whether we sound excited and upbeat or we sound a little downtrodden, right? And then only 7% are the words that we use, the specific words that we use. So the words do matter, yet body language, right? Do I light up? Do I look like I'm happy to see you? Tone of voice. Do I sound like I love my job? Do I sound like I'm happy to see you? Do I sound confident in what I've just mentioned to you? Right. And then only 7% are the actual words. That's a great question. Oh, and look at you clearing those off for me. You're the bomb, Dr. Hess. That's awesome. All right. How do you coach staff who are also obsessed and bogged down in insurance that they can have empathy for a patient's financial concerns without discrediting the clinical need for our treatment recommendations? So I'm going to give a short answer. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that question. And I'm going to give a longer answer in just a moment on that, because that's huge. I'll go ahead and take one other one right now. Do you think teledentistry will change communication style and methods? I'm going to give two answers to that question. Yes and no. I think patients are going to be much more dependent and raising the expectation on the visual engagement. All right. If we think about what happened with, I'm just going to, true confession here, I'm almost 52, right? So I've seen a lot of, when I went to work in the dental practice, most of you don't even know what DOS is, but our dental software program was DOS based. Like we didn't even have Windows, Microsoft Windows yet. So there was no mouse. All those F buttons on your computer that you thought, what were those for? Those were invented before you had a mouse. That's what they were for. So with teledentistry, I think we're going to see patients expect to not only be able to see more, like begin to see you, because look at what's happened. We went from telephone only to email to text messaging to the whole social media piece, and many of us have said, oh, I'll never do blank, right? But there's more video content consumed now online than ever before. So not only with that engagement from the standpoint of the communication aspect, right? I believe patients are going to more and more want to see, how does this apply to me? What's my present condition? And what could this mean to me later? So great questions. Oh, one other, with hazmat suits, the body language will be lost. No, we will still, so I would say this, they can see your eyes. My husband and I, when we've had masks on and gone to the grocery store, every now and then he'll look at me and he'll go, I'm smiling. And I'm like, no, you're not smiling, because you can see it in the eyes. The eyes are still the body language. So, and even all gowned up, it's the difference between closed off body posture, right? When we're talking. And I think those of you that have consultation rooms that you never used, you may find as you're restructuring things that you use those more. So, okay. I will get back to the other questions, and I will dive deeper into the financial conversations and the empathy when we get to that part. Okay. Language tools. Now more than ever before, the power of the doctor's diagnosis, right? When the busier that we get, right? And believe me, I worked in a busy practice. I coach a lot of practices, variety of different offices. Many of them are busy, right? There's good busy and bad busy, right? We always strive to be productive busy. One of the things that we've got to be certain about is that we are as clear as possible with our verbal communication. So not only with the tone of voice, right, having the certainty, but when it does come to the words and conveying the understanding, we've got to be sure that we're clear. Let me give you an example. And if she was tuned into this, she would nod her head and say, yes, I did that. One of the practices that I've coached, this came out in a training meeting, that the team said, okay, Dr. Sue, which is not her name, but we'll just say it's Dr. Susan. Okay, Dr. Susan, we need your help. When you mention to the patient that you see a teeny tiny little spot that's decay, and we just need to get them back for a quick appointment, it's going to be just a little zip, right? And we'll get them in and out, right? So you've told them that, and then they come to the front to schedule, and they say, well, Dr. Susan says it's just a little tiny bit of decay, need a little zip zip, in and out. Well, when I tell them that they'll be here for an hour and that little zip zip is $300, they're irritated. So we've tried to minimize the discomfort, right? But by doing so, we really dialed down the importance and the significance of the restoration. So that's an example, but to be clear, right? Even if there are multiple treatment options, here's one way to know whether or not we're clear. Does your hygienist or your assistant, whoever's chairside with you, are they clear about what goes on the treatment plan? And going back to the what gets measured gets managed. And the last thing I'm trying to do is create a triangulation between the assistants, the hygiene department, if we have one, and the administrative team, right? But thinking about how the information is conveyed, how many times do we, and I'll go over handoffs toward the end of this presentation, do we get to that last phase of what's next, and we've escorted the patient to the administrative team member, and now that clinical team member is like, well, I'm not sure. Let me go ask the doctor. Well, that costs us a lot, right? Not only does it cost us time, it creates chaos, it begins to diminish the patient's confidence level in what's happening. Right now in their mind, it's kind of like, wow, I wish I could talk to the doctor again. So we've got to be very clear about what needs to happen. The other is we want to be sure that we convey the importance, like the clinical importance of what it is that has been diagnosed, like the why behind it, and also the time frame. So often I will hear a phrase said, oh, well, you don't have to do that today. I want you to think about that. Oh, well, we don't have to do that today. Well, literally what we're saying most of the time is we don't have to do that work today. Like today's Tuesday, let's say we're chairside with a patient. We're saying we don't have to do it this minute. What the patient hears is it doesn't really need to be done anytime soon. So whatever that time frame is that you, with your level of expertise, those dentists that are tuned in, whatever that time frame is, let's be clear about it. So if we're talking with the patient to say, well, if you were my mom, if you were my sister, if you were my brother, here's what I would recommend. This is not necessarily something that you need to stay today and have done if you feel compelled to say it that way. I would, however, have it done in the next few weeks or within the next couple of months. I believe with a great amount of certainty that that is one of the reasons why your patients come back, if you have a recare department, and they've not completed all of their treatment. Even when you were thinking, okay, I know that it wasn't money, right? Often we think the main reason that patients don't do their work is money. And I'm leading up to the whole money part, only what my insurance will pay in the money part. And I'm just going to surprise you when I tell you what that is, but I'm going to keep you on the cliff for just a few more moments since we're virtual, right? And I can't necessarily do that much audience interaction. So hang with me on that, but be clear about the time frame. So is it something that needs to, this is what we have to think, is it something that needs to be done as soon as possible within the next few weeks, within the next couple of months, definitely before their next hygiene visit? And your other way to be sure that you're clear about it is have your whomever's chairside with you to say, okay, Dr. Smith, I have that Penny needs a crown, replacement crown on tooth number 2, decay at the margin, and I've got the photo taken of that. It's this tooth, and you're recommending that she get this done ideally sometime over the next couple of weeks. And time, so I've given time frame, and that we definitely want to be sure and go ahead with that, because from the notes that we had before, there was a significant amount of decay in the previous restoration that we did 8 years ago, right? So there's just confirming what's going into the notes, and then that way you can say yes, or you can add your point of clarity. Okay. When we confuse, we lose. Dentistry is confusing. as we've done it in the past, where we're talking about tooth numbers and procedure codes. Patients have no idea what we're talking about, right? It takes them back to that whole IRS 1040 form. Okay, I want you to think, a few moments ago, I said, and we're going to get to the what's most important. So if you see these letters up at the top of the screen, WMI, that stands for what's most important. Well, when we have done our diagnostics, right, taken our x-rays, done our charting, we've taken those intraoral photos, we are doing our best to drop a pin, right, like a Google Maps pin, and you could say, okay, the Google Maps pin is here, right? We're asking them about their goals. That's further up this road. Where do they want to go? And so in the previous discussion, right, about the importance of communication, body language, tone of voice, than words, right? So we've got to be, it's not that the words don't matter. It's just that we've got to have the congruency, the alignment where our posture, our tone of voice, and our words match. What are your goals for your mouth and your smile? What are your goals for your smile? What's most important to you in your oral health? All right, I'll repeat those three questions. They are variations of the same directional thought process, right? What's most important to you in your oral health is one way to ask. Another way to ask is, what are your goals for your smile? Or what are your goals for your mouth and your smile? Here's what you can expect. And I wasn't joking earlier when I said I was getting a puppy. You know, I'm sure we've all done things that, you know, to bring us joy. We've gotten the Wii out at our house. We're playing board games. We're also talking about, you know what, we've been talking about getting a dog for 5 years, and now's the time, right? Because I'm not traveling as much as I normally do. But I bring up the dog for this reason. Most of you have seen that look that a dog will give when they're a little confused, right? They do the little head tilt, right? At least they do in the movies. Don't be surprised if you ask a patient what's most important. And this is some of the feedback that I get when I'm teaching this and then we're applying it. They say, our patients look at us like we're a little crazy. And that's because most offices don't ask. They ask questions that are good questions. They're just not best questions. So what brought you in today? What brought you in today is different than where you want to go. So again, I want you to think of the little Google Maps pin. We're telling them where they are, right? Here's your present condition. Where do you want to go? Is the data that you need to type into, if you're on the computer, like type like this, or type with your thumbs if you're using a phone. Oh, I want to go to Dallas. I want to go to Spokane. I want to go to Seattle. I want to go to San Francisco, right? Until we know where they want to go, we are spinning our wheels because we're using a frame of reference of where the last patient told us they wanted to go, right? Or we do because we feel like we have to due to time. Yet I'm telling you, making the time to ask this saves so much time on the back end because we're not guessing. We're not guessing as far as what's most important to them. Find out where they want to go. So I left you hanging on a cliff earlier about the financial part. And it's okay to have empathy. We actually, people have empathy. It's the sympathy that we want to avoid. But let's go back to will my insurance pay for this? I only want to do what insurance will pay. How about the financial piece? So this is my belief system. I believe that only 80% of the time let me back up. I believe that only 20% of the time there is a true financial consideration that there's no way they could do it even if they wanted to do it from the bottom of their heart. 80% of the time, if they're not moving forward, it's not that they can't find the money to do it. They don't have a big enough want to. Okay? They don't have a big enough want to. So what's it going to cost? I only want to do what my insurance will pay. I want you to write this down. That is an objection. It's not a goal. their goal would be, I want to keep my teeth, or it's important to me that my teeth are white, right? I'm in sales. It's important to me that my teeth are straight. It's important to me that I keep my teeth. It's not important to me that I keep my teeth, right? I don't care. I want dentures. Whatever it is that they're telling you, that's where they want to go, right? And that should be something that we take that answer and we find the appropriate place in our dental software, right? So yes, it needs to be in the clinical notes, but something that's easy to refer back to about that patient, and that anyone on the team can look and say, okay, this is the direction that they said they wanted to go, right? Think again about destination. What's their smile destination? Where does their smile story have them end up 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because once we know that goal, and one reason why I'm so passionate about this part is this is coaching, right? We are their oral health coaches. They don't know what decisions to make to get them where they want to go. And until someone asks them the right question about what's most important to them, what are their goals for their mouth and their smile, most of the time they've never thought about it, right? They're living day by day. And that's why the question about insurance comes up. It doesn't mean that they're not going to do it. It simply means, again, my belief system, which I think serves us best, they're curious. They want to know. And an opportunity to educate them that just because it's something that they want and insurance isn't going to cover it all, it doesn't mean that it's not possible or that it's not for them. Okay, so let's now talk. Oh, I'm laughing. I've looked over here. Do you need the puppy or want it? Both. Thank you, Vic Berry. Both. I both need and want it. That's awesome. All right, so a few years back, I had a wonderful opportunity to take some of my own CE. I became a certified Dale Carnegie trainer with the Dale Carnegie program. If you've ever been through that program, it is a wonderful program on it's really on communication and not necessarily on public speaking, but it is truly about engaging people. So Dale Carnegie wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And also one of his principles was to create in the other person an eager want. So we get caught up. I used to get caught up. Often teams get caught up in saying, well, we have to educate our patients. And I'm not saying that the education piece is not important, but the desire, the patient desire is more important than their clinical knowledge, right? They may not know the difference between this material and this as far as, you know, what temperature this material can be fired to. They don't have to know. I don't know the answers to those questions, right? But we've got to work to increase the patient desire, or as I like to say when I ramp up my Southern accent, inspire the desire. And no, I don't talk that way, but it would really make my day if I felt like all of you great folks in the Pacific Northwest were sitting in front of your phone, your iPad, or your computer and repeating with me in the worst Southern accent you can drum up, inspire the desire, right? Because you won't forget it. But when we do that, we increase the dollar value of treatment accepted, right? We've got to work. So if you, let me circle back a little bit, okay? Not get too terribly far down the road with what we talked about earlier, the importance of those intraoral photos, of those digital photos, because we make them part of the story. I'm very passionate about the storytelling concept. I'm actually have my second book coming out called Persuade with the Case Acceptance Story on using the power of storytelling with case acceptance. And I began to learn about this at an early age in my dental career. And I didn't realize it at the time. And we had one story that we used every single time. My dentist had bought a slide carousel. Many of you probably don't even know what that is, right? But before PowerPoint, before Zoom especially, when you would go and give a lecture, you could either use an overhead projector, right? You put the clear printed things on there, overhead projector. Probably some of you remember those from school. Or instead of photos, you could have slides printed, right? A little slide carousel. So we had a slide carousel. And I can remember that we would schedule the patients for consultation. It would usually be over lunch hour or at the end of the day. And we would sit in the doctor's private office. I would shove everything that was on his desk. He had a roll top desk, which was awesome because we could just shove everything back, pull the lid down. We'd pull the screen down. I'd hook up the projector. I'd have the written treatment plan in there. This was a long time ago, right? But he would begin to click through these slides and he would say, this is how Jan showed up at my friend's office saying, I just go ahead and pull all my teeth, right? With her hands over her mouth. But it engaged the patient in Jan's story. So even though they may not have had the same situation as Jan, they began to engage in this whole process, go on this journey of what was possible and what they wanted. And even though they may have had financial concerns, it got them involved in their own journey for what they really wanted, right? And it wasn't so much about what they needed. All right, so inspire the desire. Another way that we can do that, if we have a practice, let's just say, for example, a general practice, is to show patients more of where their present condition is. And if we have the ability to get a baseline shade, is what I call it, on our patients, if these are existing patients, it's something that you can still do, right? Is to say, hey, while we're waiting on Dr. Smith to come in and do your evaluation, I don't believe we've ever gotten a baseline shade on you. Well, here's what this does, right? And by the way, your shade guide shouldn't have impression material and gunk on it. You want some nice looking shade guides, but you need a hand mirror for the patient. You need the shade guide. And we're wanting to have the patient choose what looks to be the closest to their current shade. And the reason for that is, right, and of course we'd have some patients that this might not apply to, right? If they, unless they have dentures and they don't like the shade of their dentures, or they have veneers that they're talking about replacing. Most of the time, 80% of the time, this is a great tool to have patients really think about where they currently are. So we're getting this baseline shade, depending on how much coffee you drink, red wine, mustard, berries. Our teeth can darken, and most of the time do, as we age. So we like to get a baseline shade. That way, if there seems to be a dramatic change, we can talk with you about what may be going on, any dietary issues. So we get that baseline shade. The patient is looking, right? They've got the hand mirror. They can see themselves. They're pulling out, right? To hold up. You're helping them choose the shade. Sometimes immediately, they will ask the question, what can I do? What if I wanted my teeth to be that shade? What would I have to do? Right? So it opens the door for a conversation about whitening, or perhaps they do have some aging restorations that maybe even you've suggested that they change. It begins to get their wheels turning about what they might want for themselves. So that's another tool that you guys can have in your tool belt. Definitely would do that at the initial evaluation, if that's appropriate, if you have the type of practice that would fit into. All right, so if it works for you, Dr. Hess, I'm going to stop the share because I'm about to shift into a different segment of the program, and we can go ahead and answer a few more of these questions. Okay, I see Catherine asks, what do you say to patients when they say, if it's not broken, don't fix it? They often say that for dental problems that have not bothered them, such as interproximal decay, leaking amalgam, that need a crown. That's a great question. So that's where it's super important to ask them where it is that they want to go. Because in your analogy, it is broken, right? They may be saying, If it doesn't hurt, I don't want to fix it. So when we ask them what's most important to them, right? Well, what's most important? Well, if it's not broken, I don't want to fix it. Okay, so may I clarify that? How important is it to you that we actually address some of these things before they get to a point where they can't be fixed or they cause you pain? So if I could ask another couple of questions, ultimately, let's roll the clock ahead 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what would you like to see happening? How important is it that you keep your natural teeth, right? So you're asking questions and you're coming from, and this can be difficult. Well, it is difficult. None of us like to be challenged, right? And I think specifically, or especially when we're hearing a patient challenge a dentist about what's going on in their mouth, right? How many years of school did you have to go through, right, to do what you do? So come from a place of curiosity, right? Most people, I don't think, want to wait until they're in pain or lose teeth. So another could be, you could say, well, it's interesting that you say that. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Technically, it is broken, right? So I can understand more about what's important to you. Let's talk about what your goals are, right? And ideally, we do that at the new patient visit. If we haven't, then, and maybe we don't have time to have a large discussion with each and every ReCare patient as we begin to build this in. Yet I would look at your schedule in the morning, right? Look to see who has outstanding treatment that they haven't pursued and work to get their goals, what's most important to them. For ReCare appointments, do you reframe the questions about where they want to go? So I touched on that a little bit. That's a great question. Thank you, Amanda. What I would say is, we love having you as a patient. I feel like we have an understanding of what's most important to you and what your goals are. And if you don't mind, could we take a moment, because we've recently been through some communication training. We're wanting to be sure that we have, number one, a clear picture and make sure that we're in alignment about what your goals are and that we've got that documented in your record. So got a couple of questions for you, right? And then if it's a clinical team member asking those questions, be sure when we do the handoff, which is what we're going to talk about in a moment, that is covered with the doctor as well. Thank you. How would you get the attention of an employee that you do not hire, pay, nor can discipline? I'm not sure I understand that question. How would you get the attention of an employee that you do not hire, pay, nor can discipline? I'm going to come back to that one if you would like to clarify that one a little bit more. In this economy, without patients having extra money, do we send pre-authorizations to convince patients to move forward with elective care? So that's a great question. I only recommend a pre-authorization if a patient says, well, are you sure that's what my insurance will pay? I only want to do that if I'm going to get benefits. Because here's what happens. When we do it on everything, right, or everything that, again, the whole perception of elective, it comes back to how strong their desire is. And we all know, I mean, I've seen it happen. It happened to me ages ago. A pre-authorization or pre-estimate does not necessarily mean that they will pay. It just means that it is payable. So they need to have a big enough want to that they're able to go to plan B if the benefits don't cover it. So if they are insistent, or if you're part of a PPO and the plan mandates that you do a pre-authorization, that's the only time I would do it, because here's what happens. That's sort of like the whole, I'll think about it, and you will watch your case acceptance. It'll go down, right? But I hear you, and I feel like I feel you, because I've been on the other end of those conversations where the patients say, well, you said, and I've got an example that I'm going to show you. When we're having those financial discussions, we've got to be sure that the total treatment amount is on there, right? We want to work more on building up the want to, instead of leaning so hard on your insurance covers that, right? Because this reimbursement game, especially with where we are now, not that they won't ever pay more, but it's going to be more important than ever before that we become better communicators, better enrollers, better engagers of what the patients really want. As a hygienist, all this engagement takes time. I love engaging my patients, but I only have time in an appointment to only have so much time to address this. Standard time, 60 minutes. What would you suggest to allow for better engagement? So, and that's a great question. And hey, believe me, if you only had to see 4 patients a day as opposed to 10 or however many, I definitely hear you on that. One is the diagnostic images, the photos. Even though it takes time to take those, that helps minimize the discussion. That question, you can actually build that into your paperwork or your online paperwork to go ahead and ask the questions. Then when you're in the room with the patient, you can say, we had you answer some questions, right? Or it could be in an update if it's an existing patient. And I see that what you mentioned as far as what was most important to you was that you want to have minimal pain and minimal out-of-pocket expense, right? Then you can go from there and discuss that. It may also be, if we're looking at a standard recare appointment, and I think anytime that the patient brings it up, it's worthy of discussing, but it might be if you're taking a full mouth series of x-rays today, right? And you've got a stacked schedule, that you ask them to take care of that the next time. Here's what I find with working with dental teams. The offices that get more of the intraoral photos done consistently and make the time to do those questions, they're doing it at the beginning when they tend to be visiting with the patient anyway. I wouldn't save it until the end of the appointment. So I hope that that helps. And yes, definitely we've got to be cognizant of time. And it really begins, like we really want to begin to make it a habit with our new patients. And then I would also begin to look at the ones that, for whatever reason, we've diagnosed treatment and they're not taking action, to try to find out where they may be stuck. So great questions. Do you recommend routing sheets and scheduling in the hygiene chair? I absolutely recommend scheduling the next hygiene appointment in the hygiene chair. Some operative appointments could be scheduled in the hygiene chair, yet I want the hygiene chair primarily taking care of the hygiene patient. Routing slips, I am a fan of. I'm also very cognizant that as of late, we're not wanting to have as much paper in the operatory. So whether that is something that you have and maybe you're inserting it in a plastic slip sheet, right? Or it's for your own reference, but I'm a definite fan of the routing slips so that we can see what unscheduled treatment is still pending. Okay, I will come back and do some more questions at the end, and let's get back to the show. So the power of handoffs, you would never know it from the time that we've spent together today, but I used to run track. The reality of it is that I did shot put and discus, and they made those of us that did field events run because it kept us in shape. So I did the 2-mile shot put and discus, and then I was on what was called a scratch relay team. So we would run, but it didn't count. But it did give me a great experience with handing off that baton. So if you've ever run a relay, you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to get a sip of water here. If you've never run a relay, I'll give you an example. And I actually have a baton. It's just a little bit out of reach, so I'll use a highlighter, okay? So if I'm a runner and I've got the baton, I may think, okay, I run, and then I get to, and I'm person number 1, I get to the second person in the leg of the relay, right? And boop, I just drop that baton off with them. Yet what happens is when person number 2, right, person number 1 is coming and they'll say reach, right, or stick. Person number 2 sees that they're actually running together, and then that handoff takes place. So that if we were to think of the patient as that baton, there's never a time where that patient is like, free falling through the air. And yes, I'm being picky about the word. I've often heard of it as the pass. It's not a pass, right? Again, picture your patient's face on that football, right? You don't want if it's a pass, there's more of a potential for it to be dropped. So this is why it's super important ongoingly that we're practicing how we want to do these communications, so that, as we know, time is super important. The more practiced we are, it's just like practicing for basketball, right? We run through those plays, we do those drills, we did them over and over and over. Or let's say it's band. We practice that piece, we break it down, we do it over and over and over, so that when it comes game time, we don't even have to think about it. So let me give you a chart, a breakdown of all, and this, I'm referring to this as team communication handoff, all of the opportunities where often a patient may convey something to us, and we then need to be sure that the rest of the team knows the information. So we greet the patient, whether that is the patient walking up, or we're greeting them because they've texted us that they're in the parking lot, right? They may also say, hey, I'm here. Yes, by the way, I'm here for my cleaning and to see the hygienist, and my temporary crown came off, right? So that's a way that we can then convey the patient concerns to the clinical team. Or maybe it's, how are you guys running on your schedule? I've got to pick my daughter up from ballet practice at X time, right? Or I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm having some sensitivity on the upper left, right? We want to be sure. There's people buy, part of the reason why they buy from us is confidence. We begin to lose their confidence when they tell one person something and then the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. All right. So we're conveying those concerns to the clinical team. If there's a crown that's off, right? If there's some sensitivity, we want to be sure when the doctor comes into the room that we're saying, oh, and by the way, I know Penny's here for, she's ready to go, ready for anesthesia here. She also wants you to take a look up here, right? Or everything overall looks great with her hygiene visit today. However, she did mention that she's got some sensitivity here on the upper left. Could you take a look? Right? So brief statement relaying that communication. Then doctor, as you're making your diagnosis or talking about what we're going to do today with the clinical team, right? We're all set, ready to go. Then the actual diagnosis, reviewing treatment, the clinical team is relaying that back to the doctor, as I used in that other example, to say, okay, here's what's next. We're pulling that image up. The doctor confirms, have I answered all your questions? Anything else, Penny, that you might want to know prior to scheduling? Oh, nope, I'm good. Because that step right there, explaining next steps, asking for a commitment, we often think, so it's between this one where the doctor is having that last communication with the clinical team member before they leave the room. Often we think that patients just don't want to spend the money. And I'm here to tell you it's because they're uncomfortable much of the time, right? It's not the financial part. There is about 20% legitimately. We may find that it's a little bit more, right? That actually do have some, and I'm going to say cash flow issues. So I'm going to touch on where we often think that the ball has been dropped when it comes to treatment presentations. It's long before it gets to the financial coordinator, but it can get dropped there too. It can get dropped there too. So being sure that the patient doesn't have other questions. All right. So then the clinical team member is going to convey what Penny says she's ready to schedule. She's got some sensitivity here, and upon further, the doctor took a look at it. There is actually a crack there. So she wants to go ahead and schedule for that crown, right? So we're handing off that communication, or that may be when the administrative team member is coming to the back. Then we schedule and make the financial agreement, or if it's same day treatment, we're having that financial discussion today. So I want to leave this up in case you guys want to take a picture of it. Team communication handoff, right? Those are all of the different touch points when we think about that baton, where we want to be sure that our communication is crisp. Next, we must raise our standards for our financial discussions. So A lot has changed in the 27 years. It was 27 years ago that I went to work for my dentist, that I left my IT job with Walmart Corporation and went to work for my dentist. And how I was trained to make financial arrangements, very different than how we presently train offices. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I think it's because as a society, we are much more focused on monthly payment than we were back then. We also have more nuances, is probably a politically correct way to put, with insurance, right? But we've got to raise our standards for being prepared. And we also have to think more like a patient. So regardless of which one is most accurate, when I share these two examples, you'll see, oh, wow, neither one of them is just that fantastic. When you look at the average dollar amount spent per patient per year, I've seen studies that have said it's $600 average per patient per year in the United States, or it's $800. All right. So let's just say we take the high end and then we go back and think about our average treatment plans. That's not a lot of money. And here's the other part. Dentistry is expensive. All right. I'm not saying that in a way to make an offensive term. It's an investment. When we think about things that we spend discretionary dollars on, right? So for patients, I think part of their mindset is at times that some of dentistry is discretionary. I've got to want it, right? That's where we've got to be better influencers than we ever have before. And I also have to think like a patient. If I want it, if I want the Kate Spade purse, I'll smash the piggy bank, right? If I want the crossbow or the new phone, I'll smash the piggy bank. Yet I also know there's only so much money in that piggy bank right now. So the $400 purse, that's a much easier spend than a $1,000 crown. So we've got to be prepared to speak their language. And if we think about, and this may be an overused analogy, but when we go to buy a car, they don't necessarily talk to us in, well, how much were you wanting to spend? Were you thinking you want to spend between 25 and 35,000? Are you wanting to spend between 35 and 50? Or is your budget from 50 to 70,000? They don't necessarily talk to you that way, right? It's all about the monthly payment and doing what we can to make it simple for patients. And I believe this was important 3 months ago. The level of importance is even greater now, right? Cash flow. Plus, every family has a budget, right? So it's not only, now if we have a single person, right, that's a different conversation. But if we have a family of 4, they're also thinking about the financial considerations for everyone in the family. So we've got to make it easy, as simple as possible for patients that are motivated to get their work done to find a way to get it done. Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying I want you to be the bank. I do not want you to be the bank, right? We've got enough going on in the practice that we don't need to be the bank. Plus, there's a mindset that most patients have, and it's shifted some, but we're not at the top of the list on getting the payments every month, right? The mortgage company, the utility company, their cell phone bill, their cable bill, right? Most other things come before the payment of their medical and dental expenses. So we've got to make it easy. I want to take you back to something that I mentioned earlier. Peter Drucker said this: what gets measured gets managed. If you do not already have in place third-party financing options, and I'm going to use as an example Care Credit, right? That is one of many that's out there. So that's what I'm going to use for this presentation. Often, and I think during this pause, office managers and dentists that are tuned in, it is very important for you to take a look at how many applications are you actually doing, or did you do per month? Or let's say that we go back and look at the entire year of 2019, right? Because we may say our patients are not getting approved. And you know what the reality is? A lot of your patients are probably not getting approved. But more often than not, the vast majority will get approved if we actually ask. If we don't make the, or are you interested in a third party financing option? So how I was trained was that we would give the total amount of the treatment. Say your treatment's $3,600, right? Your treatment's $3,600. We can take care of that with cash or a check with a 5% courtesy, or we accept Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. And then I would smile and wait for them to say something. Well, here's the danger in doing that now. They tend to get not a little disrupted that I don't have something that I want. They begin to get disturbed and uncomfortable and want to leave, right? So we don't want them to lose that love and feeling over the treatment that they felt like they wanted. So what I would propose is we want to show all of the options, and we also want to begin to lead with minimum monthly payment. So this form that I'm showing you, this is actually a care credit form. You could make your own form. You could use, I'm sure there are other options out there, third-party finance, that have a form similar to this. But here's what I love about this. So your form, wherever you might get it from, should have some of these components. We always want to show the total treatment amount, right? Then here is the estimated amount that could be covered by the third-party plan, right? But we're showing the full treatment amount. Here's what your investment would be. But look, we've got all of the things on here that we already offer: cash or check, pay per visit, right? If it's phase treatment, the credit cards that we take. Then for this example, we also are offering the care credit card. So this part is important, but it's actually the next page that I feel, or it's actually the bottom of this page, is the most compelling. Here are some examples of, based on what your estimated out of pocket is. We have options from $89 a month to $584 a month, if that's something you would be interested in applying for, right? We've got to break this down, right? And I'm going to use a dental pun right here, right? Into bite-sized pieces that patients could actually wrap their brain around, right? So whether it's an interest-free payment plan or it's interest-bearing, right? If they have a big enough desire for what it is that they want, we want to be sure that we've got an option that will fit their budget. So you could have a spreadsheet. You could type these up separately to show with whatever third-party funding that you're using, but we've got to be prepared instead of the old, or we can talk about third-party financing options. Well, what does that mean to me, right, as the consumer? So it's better to say you could have a payment amount. If you apply for one of these and do this, your payments could be anywhere from $89 a month to $600 a month. Does something in between there sound like that would work for you? I'll be more than happy to help you. We've got an iPad here, right? Or you can sit in front of this computer and do an application if you'd like to see if you're approved, right? We've got to be ready to have those conversations and do it in a way. I'm going to go back to the example on the communication. What does our body language look like when we're having those discussions? How's our tone of voice, right? Do we immediately shift into someone that looks and sounds worried, right? Or do we look and sound like someone who we really want our patients to be able to get the treatment that they want, and that we believe in them. We want to help them achieve their goals, and we want to be as positive as possible, right? So be prepared and practice having those financial discussions. And sometimes, I'm not saying it's always the case, sometimes we may not have the best person in that seat. So if we have team members that are having those financial discussions that are saying, I'd never spend that much money, I would never use a third-party financing option, I would never do that if my insurance doesn't pay for it. They're probably not in the best seat. The other thing, before I begin to recap here and then answer those final questions, I mentioned empathy and sympathy. And there was a story that Zig Ziglar told. For those of you that don't know who Zig Ziglar is, you can look him up. Wonderful motivational speaker, did a lot of presentations on sales. He was the guy. Like, he had some just beautiful, beautiful messages on influencing others. And he was funny. But he described the difference between empathy and sympathy. And empathy is, let's say you're on a cruise ship and your friend is seasick, right? And so they are leaned over the rail. They're seasick. They are actively sick, right? I won't get any more graphic than that. Empathy is you standing there and patting them on the back and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. What can I do for you?" Sympathy is standing right next to them and leaning over the rail and joining in on being seasick. So we've got to be sure we want to have empathy. People don't want to buy from somebody that they really don't feel like has their best interest at heart. And at the same time, we don't want to go, "Oh, I know. Yeah, I totally get that you wouldn't want," and we may not say that with our words. "I totally get that you wouldn't want to schedule that right now." But we may say it with our body language, and we definitely say it by what we don't say when the patient says, "Does my insurance pay for that? Then I don't want it," right? That's where, if we don't know what those goals are, there's nothing to circle back to. So I want to, before I go to Q&A, just want to go back over this, and then I want to mention to you guys something that you might be interested in after this. So expanding your case acceptance funnel, the best way to work smarter, not harder. Here's the other thing that I want you to know. I get it. None of us, not even me, is going to have a 100% presented, 100% accepted, right? A lot of it can be timing for the patient. We just want to be sure that when they're ready to do those next steps to help them get towards their goal, that we're the office that gets to be their dentist. I mentioned to you guys before, and I certainly hope that it's okay that I'm mentioning this. I think right now, any resources that we can have can be helpful. My book, Growing Your Dental Business, which a lot of the case presentation things that I've shared are in that. If you go to Amazon, you can get that through the end of May. It's called Growing Your Dental Business. It's 99 cents, right? So if you wanted to get more information, take that further, help your practice come back stronger for $1, for a fourth of the price of a Starbucks tall. You can get a copy of that book through May the 31st. And then I'll go ahead and put my information up here. If you guys want to take a picture of that or jot that down, happy to do a complimentary discovery call, not a sales call, right? But if there's something that I can help you with, you can schedule that on my website, dentalcoachinginstitute.com. There's my email address, my phone number, and it's been an honor to be with you. And so I'll give you another second or two to grab that. And Dr. Hess will look at these questions, and then I will stop the screen share.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You feel free to leave that up if you want to while you're answering questions.
Okay. Okay, I'll leave it up for another minute here.
As soon as we take it down, somebody's going to type in the chat window, "What was that address again?" So,
right, that's true. That's true. So I will be happy to leave it up.
We'll go back to that one question. How would you get the attention of an employee that you do not hire, pay, nor discipline? And I think they're talking about the frustration of being an associate or working in a corporation. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and thank you for clarifying. In that moment, I thought, wow, I'm going to spend way too much time trying to figure out the question. So, wow, that speaks to a whole nother concept, right? Which would be office culture.
Yeah.
And as an associate, there's not a right way, I think, to to have that defined associate relationship, yet they really should have a role where they get to have some input on the team, right? So I think how I would get the attention is I would ask to meet with the doctor, the owner doctor, or whoever the practice manager is, and say, hey, I need your help. I'm really wanting to engage with Penny, but she doesn't really seem to be responding to my request. I'm not trying to approach this in a way that gets her in trouble. I just want us to have greater alignment, right? So if we think about a car being in alignment, if it's out of alignment, right, we're putting all this effort into it. What do we need to do that? So if you're not in a position where you can really influence them, then I would look to see, okay, how can we work together as a team? The other would be is if you have an opportunity, even before it gets to that step, other than giving short or simple direction, to say, hey, could we have a department meeting? You know, if it's something that we're wanting to have happen in hygiene, could we have a hygiene department meeting? Could I be part of that? And really work to get buy-in, right? I mean, this is coaching, right? To say, okay, here's what we want to have happen. Are you willing to? Sort of like sitting in the exit row, right? They don't just let you nod, right? And say, yes, I'm willing to throw that door out of the way in case of an emergency. Can we get a verbal yes? So that would be where I would start with that. Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Hess. I was just a little
and I was guessing, so that,
Yeah.
but yeah. Oh, great. So do you recommend routing sheets and scheduling in the hygiene chair?
Yes. So we touched on that just a little bit earlier. I do recommend scheduling the next hygiene appointment in the hygiene chair. And unless it's a new patient or someone that you know is kind of iffy on what their next step is, I would book that next hygiene appointment at the beginning of the appointment, because it's way too easy for things to get crazy at the end and forget to do it. The routing sheet, huge fan. I know now they're saying limit the amount of paperwork in the operatory. So it might be that you put that in some sort of plastic slip sheet that could be wiped down. Or if you're using it primarily for your own clinical record, we want to know what the next step is for treatment. We also want to see what family members may not have appointments, so we can at least ask how they're doing, right? Not that we're going to be discussing treatment. Okay.
Hey, what about anxiety being a reason about why patient not getting treatment done?
I think that that's probably true for more patients than we realize. And I think it's a huge opportunity to be able to put them at ease. And I'm going to call on my Zig Ziglar knowledge. I'm crediting him with this. I cannot find where this came from, but I didn't invent it. Feel, felt, found, right? So, we understand how you feel. We have many other patients that from time to time will say, I really want to get this done. I'm just so nervous. I have all this anxiety. This is where it's really helpful to have oral conscious sedation or protocols for putting patients like that at ease, right? But then we can go back to that saying what they found is when they booked a sedation appointment, right? And then you can take it from there, right? That we were able to, which our doctors certified in, we're able to put you more at ease pre-appointment, you're more at ease during the appointment, and you're able to get more work done during that visit. So thank you for asking that question, because it definitely, I'm a fearful patient, probably not as much anxiety as those types of patients have, yet I have been known to white knuckle it when I'm getting my teeth cleaned. So, okay, if you make a treatment plan for a crown based on the PPO fee, the patient has an expectation low only to pay $450. Without pre-authorization, claim can get tied up. How do we best present treatment plan to increase case acceptance? So I'm going to go back to the basics of, we say what the full fee is, right? So our fee for that is $1,000. If it is and here's what else we have to look at. There's something called opportunity cost, right? If every time we are doing a pre-authorization, like what you're talking about, it takes up more time. What percentage, if you're in network, what percentage of your crown claims are actually not being paid, right? If you're only getting $450 on that, rarely, unless it's a cosmetic case that we're trying to bill as being restorative, rarely is that going to happen. So I would be cautious not to manage that whole protocol. I call it management by exception. So let's not get so caught up on the few times, and I don't want patients upset with us, right? But here's what else I know. You can spend way more time, payroll hours, trying to figure out everything there is to know about the insurance, and it's still not going to be 100%. So hopefully I answered that. If that's an in-network thing, most of the time, unless it's a replacement, which we would need to ask the patient, how long has it been? If we didn't do the previous restoration, unless it's a replacement that's happening in too short of a time frame, there's going to be reimbursement for that. Third-party funding, the longer the term, the more it costs the provider. How would you handle that? So this is where I strongly recommend with the clients that we work with that we look at what are the menu options with whoever that third-party funding company is that we want to offer. And then also look at what does it cost us when our patients don't do the work. So my recommendation would be, right, we come up with a couple of options interest-free, a couple of options that are interest-bearing to allow the patients to stretch that out. And let's say, right, we're presently at the time of this recording, it is April the 28th. All right. So let's say if we were to be back full operation May 1st, we could say, let's start this May 1st. Let's go far enough out. So we get those in place. And for the months of June and July, right? So for 2 months, we go with that new menu of what we're offering with our financing. Then we look at, if we think back to the earlier part of the presentation, what is our average dollar value per case, right? So how much greater has our case presentation gone up? Everybody won't take those longer terms, but for the ones that weren't going to do the work at all, we still had to pay our overhead, our fixed overhead, right? Which this gets into a separate conversation, but I just want you to think about this. We have to pay the rent or the mortgage, right? We've got fixed expenses that we're paying. Unless we're not bringing enough team members on, you can throw your team salaries in there too, right? So our additional cost of doing that work is our lab and our supplies, right? So the best way to know is test it for 2 months. Barbara is asking, is it okay if I keep going, Dr. Hess?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Will you grab the big hook and drag me off the stage when you're...
Yeah, no. Dr. Shelburn's not on till 2:30 there.
Okay, awesome. And you tell Roy Shelburne I said hello.
I will.
Okay, I want to think about it. Patient expresses desire, but says they just need to think. What did we do wrong? Barbara, that's a great question. There will always be a percentage of people that say that I need to think about it, right? We want to reduce that number, right? How do we know that we're reducing that number? Either through a dental dashboard, which easily allows us to track how many people we presented treatment to and how many scheduled, or we manually do it. In other words, we presented 20 treatment plans today, how many scheduled? The goal is not to eliminate those. It happens to me, right? Everybody doesn't make an immediate buying decision, but the more people that say, let me think about it, the more likely it is that we confuse them with the treatment options, or we did not make it as simple as we could for them to find a way to pay for the treatment. How do you feel about membership plans for non-insured patients, $350 a year for hygiene exams, 5% discount? I love membership plans. Having worked with many clients that have them, I'll give you my personal opinion. I would go with a company to help administer that, like a Boom Cloud or Clear, rather than you doing it on your own, primarily because at this point, and you guys may type in the Q&A if you know of one and I'm not aware, none of the practice management softwares are built to really support a dental membership plan. In other words, we've got to put some sort of billing codes in, and then we've got a spreadsheet that tells when they expire. I've gone into many client offices and they have patients whose member plan expired 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and they're still not charging them for hygiene, like they're missing some of those, and they were still getting the discount. So, and I would also say, be sure that that is something that is doable in your state, and it's a member plan, not an in-house insurance plan. So, but thank you for wording that the right way and calling it a membership plan. As a hygienist, Kara has a question, evaluating if they needed to be treated for perio. To schedule a patient at the beginning of the appointment doesn't allow for that. It only allows for scheduling continuing care. Is there a better solution for scheduling? So thank you for asking that. So let me go back to, and that was what I was referring to. In most cases, unless an office has added a hygiene chair, most hygienists, 80% of the patients that they're seeing are recare, right? If we've just been added, then all of your patients may be new patients. So new patients, you could not schedule their, you're correct. You could not schedule that at the beginning of the appointment. I would schedule their next recare appointment or perio appointment if you can with you. If it's perio and they need to talk to the treatment coordinator, be sure that the, that the handoff is crisp so that the patient understands. So the new patient appointment, you'd need to schedule that at the end of the appointment for their next hygiene visit. For a recare appointment where you made notes, you know that they're borderline needing perio treatment or a periodontal maintenance, until you've had a chance to evaluate those, you most likely would need to schedule at the end or toward the end of the appointment. Oh, thank you, April. Thank you so much. So glad you could attend. You started to give a script about insurance and Crown and then stopped. Wonder if you could finish the script to first of all give the full fee for the Crown. Okay, thank you, Christine. That happens to me sometimes. I have a little bit of a short attention span. I might have seen a squirrel. All right, so the full fee for the Crown is $1,000, which we have that written up here. We estimate from what your benefit plan is telling us that they will cover $300. Therefore, your estimated out of pocket is $700. And so this is not only a verbal conversation, this is a written conversation so that they know, right? And I would have in there and have them initial that if the insurance is not paid within 90 days, that the remaining amount will be the responsibility of the patient, or you may put within 60 days, but there's something where they understand that they're on, that they're accountable for the entire thing. And, don't be surprised, right? If they say, whoa, 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 right? If they know they need the Crown, if they saw that image and they're disrupted by it, then they may say, well, if it does wind up being that much, what are my options? That's where we've got to be ready for that third-party funding. Can you show the treatment plan presentation paperwork that you recommend? I actually 9 times out of 10 would use something like that care credit form. Let's see. So there was another one that I think may have disappeared, that it was a insurance.
Yes. Yeah, it was just stating an insurance plan out there, or membership plan.
Gotcha. Yes. So definitely call that a membership plan. And as I wrap up here, I want to, first of all, thank you guys for your time today. You have been amazing. When you think about dental membership plans, what I'd love for you to do, if you're planning on tuning in to Dr. Shelburn's program, if you don't have a dental membership plan, one of the fastest growing insurance plans out there is the the private plan, where the patients are going out and they're Googling dental insurance, right? They don't have any. Go to dentalplans.com. You'll be surprised at what you find. So what these are is they are the individual discount plans where uninsured, let's say right now, a lot of people are sheltering in place and they're thinking, we don't have dental insurance. We need to buy dental insurance. So they're going out and paying $150 a year, maybe more. And it has a label that you would recognize on a lot of these that are also insurance companies. And they think that they've bought insurance. What they've bought is a discount plan that more than likely most of you don't take. So in order to, this is where it comes back to marketing. In order to be sure that all of your patients know that there can be an option for those that don't have insurance, that's where the membership plans come into play. And again, I'm sure there are other ones out there other than Clear and BoomCloud, but from the state to state regulation standpoint, that's another reason why I would use a group like that, because you've got somebody that's like tuned in, dialed in to what's going on with the different state practice acts that can help keep that a positive thing for you, I guess, so to speak. So, Dr. Hess, any other questions or comments before we wrap up?
No, that was absolutely fantastic. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you again for your time.
Wonderful to meet you.
It was wonderful. So just one question. Do they sell a lot of crossbows where you're at? You mentioned that a couple of times.
No, but I started to think, it's often I get in trouble for not being politically correct. And I don't know how everybody feels about guns. So I just thought I'd come up with a crossbow.
I personally
have done a little deer and turkey hunting, but I've just used my car. It was not, and they were not planned hunting trips. So it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We're just going to put on the our PowerPoint here again with the upcoming webinars. Just a reminder to everyone, your CE credit will be, it'll show up in your email inbox here in the next couple of days. And that's coming from the University of Washington. So look for an email from the University of Washington School of Dentistry CE. And then if you're an AGD member, we'll be reporting your CE credit directly to the AGD. So you don't need to do that. And I'll just put up this list of, this PowerPoint with upcoming speakers here. Use the QR codes. If you missed a webinar, you can access those at YouTube at Washington Academy of General Dentistry. Again, you don't need any CE codes. You don't need to do anything else. Your CE credit will be coming your way. So thank you very much for joining us. If you haven't signed up for Dr. Shelburne yet, there's still time to do so. He'll be on at 2:30 Pacific Standard Time. Looking forward to the presentation. It should be a lot of fun. Or go to www.washingtonagd.org. That's where you can sign up for that webinar or use the QR codes. Thanks again. Dr. Nash lectured yesterday. Wonderful presentation. His wife, Deborah Engelhardt Nash, lectured for us as well. All friends of Penny. So it's great to see how much support we've gotten in the dental community. Terry Harris's course should be up on YouTube here within a couple of hours. He'll be coming back next Wednesday at 2:30. I don't know if we'll have limitations on the number that can attend again. I would guess so, just based on our pricing plan on our Zoom account. Sorry, it's just too expensive to do more than 3,000 participants. Again, this is the Washington Academy of General Dentistry Stay Home, Stay Healthy CE series. Please share the links with your colleagues, your staff members. Everybody is welcome to attend and get CE credit. We're going to sign off here in just a minute. We'll just let a few more of these flyers go by. And then I just want to say thank you to Dr. Gary Hayamoto, one of our panelists, and our executive director, Valerie Bartoli, and to our webmaster, Dr. Pressett, who's probably working hard to get all these additional webinars posted on our website right now. Dr. Fling is going to be back on Thursday. This is a follow-up you guys asked for on his shell technique. And that should be a wonderful presentation as always. He's a heck of a speaker. Bill Robbins is next Monday. Thank you to the International Academy of Nathology and the Arkansas Academy of General Dentistry and the Canadian Academy of Restorative Dentistry and Prosthodontics for putting together a great lineup of speakers next week. We've got 20 more webinars before the May 18th deadline that we're supposed to be going back here in Washington State. So hopefully we stay on that deadline and are able to get back and treat patients. If you have any questions, info@washingtonagd.org, but do not send questions regarding your CE credit. We won't be able to answer that. The CE credit is coming from the University of Washington School of Dentistry CE department. And if you're looking for something on your AGD transcript, that will be 2 to 4 weeks out, most likely. With that, we're going to wrap up here and give our panelists a break before our next speaker. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Hayamoto. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Dr. Hess, our moderator of the classes. You do an outstanding job, Dr. Hess. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. S.
Gives me somebody to talk to. All righty.